this person. She needs to rest.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Credit Chat Live. I'm Rod Griffin, Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. And joining me, as always, we've done this twice, Christina Roman, our Manager of Consumer Education and Advocacy. It has been an eventful week, Christina.
Yes, it has. It has.
So I actually did an early morning crowdcast and Facebook Live on Monday to announce that we are at Experian and the other bureaus providing one free credit report a week for the next year to help make sure that people have the information they need to manage that credit report and be able to get the information they need, work with their lenders. So as we were talking, that we should probably tell people more about that, right? I mean, I think that's going to be important.
Yeah. I think it's just important for one to know why people should even check their credit report, especially now as we're getting further into this COVID season, making sure that you are proactively looking at your credit report and you have the access now. That video that Rod created is on Facebook, on the Experian News Facebook page, so you can go back and check that out. But it is really important for you to check your credit report right now. So, Rod, do you want to kind of give a rundown on why?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about credit reports and needing to know what's there, the credit report now is going to be a critical tool in managing your finances, knowing exactly where your debts are, what your relationships are with your creditors, and using it as a way to work with them to make sure that you are getting things updated like you need them, making sure that they are reported correctly. For example, if you enter into forbearance or deferment, making sure that your accounts are shown with that proper status. So shown in forbearance or deferment. If you work with your lender and they add a disaster statement to your credit report, you'll be able to check your report, make sure that's updated. And you'll find contact information for your lenders and others in the report. So you'll be able to reach them if you don't have that information. So it's a really important financial tool as you go through this process to make sure that your credit is protected as we go through this downturn. And so it's there to work for you when you come out of it. So we want to be partners in that process.
Yeah, and it's important to know that your lenders, they're not updating it every single week, but every 30 to 45 days. So as you go in, you may have bills that are staggered throughout the month. So maybe you have a credit card bill due on the 15th, a mortgage bill due on the 20th. As they report out, it will update several times throughout the month, but just know that it takes 30 to 45 days to see any kind of change.
Yeah, I think that's important. Really important to understand that if you contact a lender and they say that they're putting your account in forbearance, for example, if you get your credit report that afternoon, you probably won't see that yet, or in the next week. It might take some time. The account will be there and it will be in forbearance and it will be treated as it should be, but you won't necessarily see the update to your credit report immediately. So don't panic. I think that's one of the things we'll have we want to help people understand is if you don't see something right away, doesn't mean it's not going to be updated. Just don't panic. Give it a bit of time because it does take some time. Usually lenders update things at the end of the billing cycle. Mm-hmm. That might be in a few days. If you're close to the end of the billing cycle, it might be 30 days if you're right at the beginning of it. So, allow time. And it's also important to know that if you have multiple credit cards, installment loans, mortgage loans, they all update at different times throughout the month. So you could see some change as you go along, but probably not a lot all at once.
Yeah, definitely. And that whole point about updating 30 days later or, within a certain time frame, it's important to know because if you've missed a payment, but you have an opportunity to make it up within that window, it's not going to be reported just yet. So if you can go back and make up that payment or at least a partial payment, whatever they'll accept to clear you for the month, then do that because just because you're a few days late doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to report you right away.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, there's the difference between a late payment with a lender and a late payment with a credit bureau are significant. A lender late could mean 1 day after the payment due date. For Experian, it's 30 days past the due date. So it's a full billing cycle. And so if you can't get a payment to your lender right away on the due date, it doesn't mean it's going to affect your credit report right away. And so you have some cushion. And we've seen a bit of that, I think, as we've gone through this. You know, I heard from a few people who were concerned that they were affected early in this process and were concerned that late payments might appear. But the reality was that they were able to address some issues, and it was, it never got to the credit report. And so there was some time, and so we wouldn't see those impacts right away. It does take a bit of time.
Yeah, so we can't stress enough the importance of talking to your lenders if you are going through some financial troubles right now. And I want to just remind you, this is a credit Q&A. So if you have questions about credit reports or credit scores, please feel free to ask your questions. We are monitoring Facebook right now. We are monitoring Crowdcast. So if you have a question, go ahead and post it, and we'll try to answer it within this session.
And we're also live on Facebook right now. So on the Experian News Facebook site. So please, visit there as well. If you're a Facebook fan and you're watching from Facebook, submit your questions. We have Jennifer White, who's our foundation and our invisible support, who is checking questions there, and we'll submit them for you as well. And we do have one right away. And so, we'll address the question. The question is, how will a reported late payment impact my credit, and how long will it stay on my credit report? So it's it's 2 for 1. It's 2 questions. And the answer is, it will affect your credit report if it's reported as a 30-day late payment significantly. It's the most important factor in credit scores. So late payments are going to have the most important impact. And that late payment will stay for 7 years from the original delinquency date. So going to be really important. And the thing to know now is, with everything that's going on, the CARES Act and our policies and lenders are working with you to make sure that if you are going to have issues, we can make sure that everything stays current. If you're working with them around forbearance or deferment or other payment options, it can help protect your history so that if you can't make that payment on time, it's not going to hit you right away. So important.
And then that second part, how long did we answer that? Did I miss that part?
Yeah.
How long does it?
I tossed it in there pretty fast. 7 years.
Okay.
So,
sorry.
7 years from the date it became delinquent. So, it's a significant issue over a period of time. The further in the past it occurs, the less it affects you. So the older, unlike life, where getting older is, I can tell you from experience, I don't want to, but the older a late payment is, the better it is. Or not better, the less effect it will have. So it's less important if you catch up. So
yes. And it's important that even if they report you 30 days late, if you don't make up that payment, or if you don't contact them and try to figure out how you can work through that payment, then it'll become 60 days late, and that'll get reported to the credit bureau, and then 90 days late. So you don't want to let it get to those points.
That's absolutely true. And let me try something here. This is always exciting when I do this, but we'll give it a shot. When we look at the information that we have, we'll focus on this screen, see how this works. So I'm fortunate to have just a few slides that kind of illustrate what we have. So when you look at account information on your credit report, when you get your report, you'll see something similar to this. There are various layouts from different sources. If you go to annualcreditreport.com, you'll see something from Experian similar to this, and it gives you a sense of what you'll see in your accounts. And at the bottom, you see the green lines. This is a positive account entry, in this case for an auto loan, and you can see the account name, who the lender would be, the account number, at least partial account number, when it was opened, the balance, and the individual, in this case, individual responsibility. It could say cosigner and that sort of thing. But most important, you're going to see this grid or an indicator potentially in up here in the account information, but you'll see whether it's current or late. If it says okay and it's green, fantastic. That means you're current. If you see a yellow box or a red box, it might say 30 or 60 or 90. That means you're 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late. You would also see that in the status component at the top, where it would say current if you brought your accounts current or were behind and caught up, but it might say current was 30 days late or current was 60 days late. Or if you're still delinquent, would say 30 days late, 60 days late. So you would see that there in the credit report. So an important thing to look for in your account information.
Yep. And you mentioned, Rod, annualcreditreport.com, and I just want to share that you can access your Experian credit report there, your TransUnion credit report, and your Equifax credit report at this one site, annualcreditreport.com. Now, kind of what's significant about the news that you can now access it weekly is because before you can only access it once every 12 months from each of the three bureaus. So now for the next year until April 2021, you can access it every single week. So that is a huge change, for this next year.
It is. And that's something we've not done before. I've been around a long time, so I have history, and a lot of people don't know Experian was the first credit reporting company to offer free annual credit reports. We were doing that in the late 1990s before there was a legal requirement. And so, and then the law, the fact and created annualcreditreport.com. So all three of the national credit reporting companies provide a report once every 12 months. For the next year, we're going to make it possible for you to get a free report, as you said, once a week, so 7 days. And especially through this period, as we get through the COVID-19 crisis, I think that's going to be really important because it's going to keep you informed. And that's what's really essential, and we want to make sure that that's happening.
Yep. And another thing to know is that your credit report and your credit score are different. So your credit score is not included in your credit report. Rod, can you talk about the why?
Huge myth. And, people confuse credit reports and credit scores. And it might be kind of amusing to me right now, to me anyway. I have a strange sense of humor, but I always talk about credit reports and credit scores and compare them to school papers and grades. And so all of the newly indentured homeschool teachers may get this more now. So it's, because there's so many. My daughter, for one, it's like she's homeschooling and it works in the school in the first place and is an aide. So she's kind of got a better grip on it than some. But and Jennifer's homeschooling, so that's an adventure. And so we have lots of parents who are going through that. And I feel for them. So it's when you do a school paper, that's like the credit report. So this is the analogy, right? As you use credit and use accounts, they will be added to your report. You're building that school paper if you're writing a paper. The teacher in the analogy is kind of like the lender. They get your credit. A lender gets your credit report like a lender takes your paper. The credit score is like the grade. The teacher assigns a grade. The lender assigns a credit score. So they decide which scores to use to help predict the likelihood that you'll repay them. That score is calculated after they get the report. Or it may be calculated when they request the report. We'll compile a report at Experian, route it through a scoring system that's proprietary to the scoring developer. Scoring developer companies like FICO, VantageScore, kind of the two famous ones. And those scores are proprietary to them. They own the algorithms. So the score doesn't happen until your report's compiled and it's calculated as a snapshot at that moment in time. And it just reflects the information in the report. So like the grade reflects the quality of the information in a school paper.
Yep.
Different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know I've seen even on social media when I was managing it for Experian, people would say, because of you, I couldn't get a credit card, or because of you, I couldn't get a car loan, they have this perception that the credit bureaus give them their credit score when really it is an algorithm based on the information in their credit report. So I think that's something important to know.
Yeah, and you touch on another really good point, and that's that Experian doesn't decide whether a person's approved or declined. We provide the information to the lender, and the lender makes that decision. They use a credit report to help them make that decision and to determine that you'll repay a debt as agreed. But that decision is theirs, and the law actually says that they have to tell you the credit bureau did not make the decision that they did, and that's often confused. We provide the report to lenders, and we provide exactly the same report to consumers. In fact, when you get your personal report from us, you get more information than the lender does. They don't get what we call soft inquiries, for example. So you as a consumer will get additional information around who's looked at your report, like get yourself, so getting your own report won't hurt credit scores. And that's another big myth. And so if you're looking at a report once a week, don't worry about it hurting your scores, because it won't. Only you see that inquiry. Pre-approved credit offers, insurance, employment, reviews by existing lenders. Only you see those, but we provide a record of that information for you so you know exactly who's looked at that report.
Yep. And Rod, speaking of myths, we actually have somebody tuning in right now. Stacy, she asked this question: can you explain the restarting debt clock as it may relate to items falling off of your credit report and then returning? There may be some myths to clarify.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'll read it again. Can you explain the restarting the debt clock as it may relate to items falling off of your credit report and then returning? And you're right, Stacy, there may be some myths to clarify. The clock doesn't restart, and that's the big myth. If you have an account and you have a late payment or it falls off, what will happen is let me back up. If you have an account, usually it's kind of in this context. You've had an account, you're unable to repay it, it's charged off as a loss and goes to collections. If you make payments on the collection account, for example, the myth is you'll reset the clock and they can report it longer. And that's not true. Collection agencies must report the original delinquency date from the original account, and they cannot change it. So you can pay the collection agency, you can work with them, talk to them, share information, whatever you need to do. It will not cause the information to be returned to your credit history. If you dispute something, another kind of aspect of this, if you dispute something and it's removed from your credit report, because it shouldn't be there, it won't come back unless it's just outside of the dispute time. So kind of fallen into a different question a little bit, but related. And it's something I'm seeing with some schemes that are now, predatory kinds of credit repair, what they call credit repair firms. There are good ones. There are lots of bad ones, and some bad ones are now saying, dispute everything. They'll miss the 30-day period to come up your report. What they aren't telling you is it can come right back, because lenders can say, we missed it, but it should remain as reported, and it will be returned. It should be returned to file. We send a notice to the consumer and it comes back. And that's and federal law allows us to do that. So that's one of the things that I think sometimes exacerbates that myth as well. It can come back. But in terms of the timeframes, once something's removed, they cannot change that original delinquency date. So the information cannot come back to your credit file if it's removed after that time frame. And that's the key. And so in the original delinquency date, that's probably the most important date, also one of the most confusing. So the original delinquency date is the date that the account first became late on the original debt, and you were never current again. You never caught up and had an on-time payment. So the account becomes late, gets further and further late, charged off as a loss, goes to collection. That very first payment is the payment date where that starts, and that can't change. And that's a matter of federal law. And so people get confused about that. You can talk to your lenders. You can work with them. It's not going to change that date.
Thanks, Stacey, for asking that question. If you have other questions, please feel free to put them in either Crowdcast or on Facebook, because we are managing both pages.
So, yep. And that's, so you'll see them both places, and you want to make sure that people get the right information. That's why we're here. This is such a confusing time. and there's so much going on right now and so much information. I don't know if Christina, if you've seen this, we have a sort of a neighborhood community social media page. Mm-hmm. And I saw something that's bothersome to me. I'm not sure exactly how to respond. It was a so-called credit repair firm who posted a screenshot and a video of an individual's, it was actually their Experian account in their name. So their membership information in our credit monitoring service. So beware of this. I mean, and this is what concerns me. I don't know if the individual had given this so-called credit repair firm their information and identity, and they signed up using that individual's identity. This is bothersome to me. And said, "See, I fixed your credit score." If you're paying somebody to do that, you can do it for free. You can enroll in our credit monitoring services at no cost. If you want more premium service, there's a monthly fee, but you don't have to. And you can get your credit report and your credit score for free, and you can get the risk factors that go with it. So be very careful about what you share. I mean, when we talk about this a lot, we all want our credit information to be accurate. We all want to have good credit scores. When life is hard, the bad people come out and they start to take advantage of you. And out of desperation, we want things to be that way. Know your rights. And I say this all the time too, because I don't think we can say it too much. You know what the Credit Repair Organizations Act says. And it's part of why we're giving you a free report once a week. You don't have to pay anybody to get that report. You don't have to pay anybody to dispute information. One of the things that that we have on that I should have pointed, that I'll point out. Let me pull that slide back up, because when you see this, it's important to know that when you get your Experian credit report, see there's a little button that says dispute right next to every entry. All you have to do is click that button and follow the instructions. There's no cost to disputing information. You don't have to pay somebody to do that. And that's what most of the illegitimate credit repair firms do. They just dispute information using your identifying information, and you don't have to pay somebody to do that. So be aware of that. That's free and easy to do. So don't be afraid to dispute information. If you believe there's something that's inaccurate, we want you to do that as well. And we make it really easy to do. It's not this mysterious thing. So you know that, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen that on social media, but I have started to see those little signs that pop up on like light poles that say credit repair and with the phone number right below it. And you just start to see those pop up a little bit more now. And I'm like, who calls a random phone number that just says credit repair? But I'm sure people do. So I'm sure they have had success with that. But it's important to know that. And I think it's also important to know that now a lot of scammers come out as far as just contact you and trying to get information over the phone. So just knowing who you should and shouldn't give information to. And that's another good reason to check your credit report. If you've received a phone call and maybe given a little bit too much information, or you think you may be the victim of identity theft or some kind of fraud, looking at your credit report can help you see where that may have occurred, if that may have occurred.
Yep. Yeah. And we're seeing it. You bring up the phone issue. We used to call it pretext calling. So they would call and it's all about social engineering. They ask questions, you want to respond. It sounds great. So you have to be really careful. The phishing emails. There's been reports, and I saw local news last night. There's texting scams now that are saying, things that sound really frightening. And they're sending a text, and there'll be little things that are misspelled or not quite right. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if it sounds terrifying, take a deep breath and go to don't respond to the email or the text. Instead, go directly to your billing statement or customer service online. Find your lender account online and go to their customer service. Make sure you're working with the real people, because that can be really dangerous right now.
Yes, absolutely. One of the other questions that we were going to discuss today, Rod, is who can view your credit report? You know, like aside from you, who else can view your credit report? Who cannot view your credit report?
Yeah. You can get your own report, as you said, as often as you like, and that's another myth. Don't worry about getting your own report. It won't affect credit scores. In terms of who else can, there are very limited reasons, or what we call permissible purposes, to get a person's credit report. And there's very clearly spelled out in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. If you apply for credit, you are essentially giving permission for a lender to get your credit report. You usually see that in the contract, and you might have to look at that little bitty print somewhere on page 30, but it's in there usually. So, if you're applying for credit, your existing lenders can review your accounts as part of their portfolio review. If you are the subject of a subpoena, a court order, will provide a report to that court or law enforcement agency for getting your own report, which we mentioned. For investors, so if someone says they want to invest $1 million in your startup, you could potentially get their credit report and say, yeah, but you have $2 million in debt. So you have a permissible purpose. For certain kinds of government licenses and things like security clearances, they can review your report. For insurance purposes and for employment purposes. And one thing I always stress with employment is employers never, ever get credit scores. And that's probably the biggest myth I hear, and I see it all the time. And employers do not get credit scores. They don't make a decision about your employment based on a number. They get a limited version of your credit report. So hugely important to understand that. They get a very a limited, what we call truncated version of your report that complies with Equal Employment Opportunity Act regulations. Eliminates anything like dates of birth or age, those sorts of things from the report. So you don't have to worry about that. There's no account numbers in an employer report, things of that sort. So really important to know. So those are kind of the big ones. And so there's about a dozen different reasons, and that's all.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We have a few actually questions that came in on Couchcast if you want to check those out.
Yeah. So someone asked, my student loans were placed in forbearance. Does that mean they won't be reported late if I skip a payment? And let me read it again. I didn't hit the answering button. So learning how to use Crowdcast, we're getting better. My student loans were placed in forbearance. Does that mean they won't be reported late if I skip a payment? And if you have an account in forbearance, what that means is that you don't have any payments due during that forbearance period. So you're not really skipping a payment. You're not required to make it, but make sure that the lender is in agreement and good reason to check your report, give it a bit of time, make sure it's reported in forbearance because you won't be required to make that payment. And under the CARES Act, which is regulating what happens in this crisis with COVID-19, lenders are not supposed to, can't report late payments during that period. So if your account is on time and current at the beginning of that forbearance period, it would continue to show that your account was current. If your account was, say, 30 days late when the forbearance period started and you missed the payments, it would still continue to show, or you don't have to make payments during the forbearance period, it would continue to show 30 days late. It would not become more delinquent. So it's kind of an important thing to understand. At the end of that forbearance period, your payments will resume. You'll need to make them on time and continue to make them going forward.
That's actually a good question because I was thinking about that. I did the annual credit report pool just to test it out, just to see what it looked like. Yeah. And I was thinking I didn't check the student loans, how that was being reported, because I automatically got placed on forbearance, even though I'm still making my payments. So I wanted to see how that looked on the credit report. So that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. Yeah,
it is. And that's another thing that there are certain federally guaranteed loans, student loans among them, mortgages that are automatically being put in forbearance. So if it's a federal guaranteed loan, not necessarily true for a private student loan. Mm-hmm. So if you have a private student loan, you'll need to go back to that lender and make sure that it's being reported in forbearance.
Yes.
And another great question from Stacy. I've read that criminal convictions can show on a credit report. Where would that item be located on an Experian credit report, and how long does it remain on there? They don't show on an Experian credit report. Another great myth. Criminal records are not part of a credit report. The only thing you would see in a credit report will be debt-related information. So there's nothing about criminal history. There's nothing about what you buy. So, the example I always use is if I went out and bought a brand new Corvette convertible, candy apple red, black leather interior. My wife won't let me, and she's much wiser about that than I am. So you won't see, all you can see is auto loan on the credit report. We don't know what you buy. So if it's debt related, it will be in the credit report. If it's not, it won't. You don't have to worry about that. Criminal records are not part of a credit report. So great question.
Yes.
And that's a lot of concern, I think, now. People are very worried about what might appear in a credit report, how it would affect them. So again, part of why we were making them available to people, so you can get it, you'll know what's there, and if there are any questions or issues or concerns, you can start to address them.
Yeah. Rod, now I know they're available every week, but how often would you recommend somebody go in and check their credit report?
It depends. Christina knows this answer. You can see the look in her eye. You know what he's going to say. It depends on the individual. So, if for most people, if you are not planning to apply for credit, never had any issues around fraud or identity theft, nothing that's concerning you or warning you about that, getting it at least once a year is a good idea. And again, you could do that before at annualcreditreport.com once every 12 months, know what's in the report. Beyond that, if you've been a victim of identity theft, more often, if you're planning to apply for credit, absolutely should get the report at least 3 months, if not 6 months in advance. Make sure everything's in good shape so you know what you need to work on if there's something you need to work on. If you're just the kind of person that's worried about what's there and concerned and want to be updated and know what's there, more often. We have monitoring services that provide for people to get their reports as often as they like. Now you can get that report free once a week for the next year. So, in times like this, which are unique to us, to all of us, more often, obviously, I think people may initially get them, like once a week for a few weeks and find out it's really pretty boring. Not a whole lot changing. We hope that's the case, right? We don't want to see a lot, and then sort of maybe once a month, but don't know yet. That's going to be interesting to see for us as well.
Yep. Yes.
How about you? How often are you going to get your report?
Well, I just did it. So I pulled all 3 this week just to see what was showing. And I know we're kind of already on that 33-minute mark, but I think it's important to know why people should get their credit reports from each of the 3 bureaus. But just to answer your question, so I'll probably go in next month and see if anything's changed. I doubt it because, I'm still thankfully able to work from home, so I'm able to make my payments. But I am going to monitor it pretty closely.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of the same way. Checked right away. The one perk we have at Experian as employees is we have a membership to our monitoring service, so I can check whenever I want to. But I've done the same thing. Went through annualcreditreport.com just to be sure everything is as it should be, and then I may try it just to kind of see what happens for a week or two. Then after that, I'll probably kind of calm down, and like everybody else, I'll check once a month, maybe. Fortunately, I don't have any student loans anymore, so I outgrew them at some point, or outlived them or something. But paid them off. That's what I did. So, yeah. But yeah, check that report, and you need to check the report because in answer to your question, I eventually got there, right? You should check your report because, one, you want to make sure everything's reported accurately. I think almost everybody will find that's the case because reports are very accurate, but you want to be sure that information is there. As you're working with lenders, make sure that the account status is updated if you have things going into forbearance or deferment, to make sure over time that those are updated appropriately, to make sure that there are no signs of fraud or identity theft, especially in this day and with things that are happening. Make sure that everything is not showing any sign of fraud or identity theft is going to be really important. And if you find signs of fraud, be able to respond right away. So you can report accounts as fraudulent. We can help you address those issues. You can add fraud alerts if necessary, so that your credit history is protected from ongoing fraud, and we can help you through that process. So important to stay on top of things, because again, this is such an unusual, unique time for everybody.
Yeah. Is it possible that the information is different from each of the three bureaus?
Can be a little bit. Usually you'll find it's very close. There may be information that's not updated at the same time, so you might see a bit of difference. Occasionally there may be a lender, usually like a small local lender, or a small like a regional lender, that may report to one or two and not all three. So you might not see it on all three reports, but generally you would see basically the same information on all three. But it's, again, good to check all three if you see something that's of concern on one, so that you make sure that it's taken care of across all three reports.
All right. Well, we are at our 36-minute mark.
We could go on for hours, though.
I know. I had more questions, Ra.
You always have more questions. That's good.
I'm learning along with everybody too, though. I'm always learning.
So am I. I mean, and now especially, there's so much that's evolving and changing. So important to be here. That's why we're here and on Credit Chat Live. And that's why we're here at least 4 days a week now from Experian. I'm on Periscope Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern. Perfect time for a shameless plug. And we're here on Credit Chat Live on Facebook Live and on Crowdcast at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. And on Twitter on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, and answering questions and talking to great experts and having conversation. You can learn more about Experian's live broadcasts at ex.pn/creditchatlive and at ex.pn/creditchat. And we hope to see all of you there with us. Please bring the questions you have, because we want to answer them and want to share information with you. So thank you all for being here. Christina, thanks for the great questions. Jennifer, for helping on the invisible side and on Facebook. So thank you all so much. Please take care, everybody. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll talk to you all again very soon. Take care, Christina. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.